It's I can't tell if his eyes are open or closed. So
they're open. It's a distance thing. It's a distance thing. Like, you need some room.
Because the picture, I think it's referencing. I feel like his eyes are closed, but I really don't know.
No,
it's really good picture. Though. I mean, it's a really good sweater.
Thank you. Yeah, Pac.
All right.
I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, I say this is like my new thing, I guess, but it's also like, it's not just like a funny saying. It's also like, to me, objectively true. Like, I wouldn't even be sitting in here talking to y'all right now without Pac. And like, the reason for that being that, you know, I always have to explain to people, like, I didn't grow up with radical parents. I didn't grow up in a revolutionary family, or I didn't grow up with a thorough education of the Black radical tradition, or I didn't have any of that. My introduction to all of it was Tupac Shakur. And like, the first time I heard Tupac, I was talking about how my parents, I grew up in a religious household, so I couldn't listen to worldly music or secular music like that unless it was like Disney or whatever. But I would have these moments where I could sneak away and watch MTV or VH1 or whatever it was. And I remember VH1 used to have this show Zach and I talk about all the time called I Love the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I loved watching
I love the 90s.
And the 80s and the 70s ones.
Yeah.
Crack.
And in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I think they did 2010s too.
No.
It may have not been.
Brought it back.
It may have not been I Love the 90s, but I think it was. I don't think it was just like some countdown type deal. I think they were like comedians giving commentary and whatnot. And God, this must have been like sometime between 2003 and 2005 or something. It's like in that window.
Yeah.
And I heard Keep Your Head Up. They had it in the countdown. So mind you, I'm not even hearing the full song. I'm just hearing like comedians, moments,
and they make jokes.
While they exactly. But I was like,
Christian Finnegan talking about,
right?
Michael Ian Black is up there.
Yes,
giving his 2
yes.
cents about Pac.
And Godfrey also.
Yeah. That black dude.
That man is so old, like surprisingly old.
Gilbert Godfrey?
No.
He just died.
No, not Gilbert Godfrey. Godfrey. He's like he's Nigerian. He's Nigerian. Right?
He is Nigerian, and you know what's funny is somebody told me that he like has this attitude about like, I'm the only Nigerian comic out there, and like. He would point out that you're half Nigerian. Yedoye. Well,
he'd be like, you're not pure Nigerian.
Well,
Yedoye.
look, I had that conversation. I had that conversation with somebody, and then I swear to God, like, it was what's his name? Why can I not remember his name? He's a comic. Doesn't matter. But we had this conversation, and I was open for this dude in Atlanta, and I swear to God, I came back to New York like the next a couple days later. I was in Columbus Circle for an audition or something like that, and I swear to God, Godfrey walks out of the subway station, and I look across Columbus Circle, and he makes eye contact with me, and just like death stare.
Nigerian awareness.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it.
How he knew.
He was just like, this motherfucker loves the 90s.
You know my work, motherfuckers.
But anyways, I heard that glimpse of the song that I got through that. It's literally, I make music. I've came up in a musical family. My dad's a musician. I've listened to a lot of music in my life, and there's no other like musical moment that I can think of that hit me like that to hear something and it just like it gets you like right there, like off rip, to the point where you're like, who is this person? And from that point on until this day, it became like an obsession, just trying to understand who he was and like what he was trying to do. And so going back to what I was saying originally, as you do that, as you go through that process, like I was just explaining this to someone the other night that as an artist, you know, Tupac informed my ideas about, you know, what I'm supposed to do through art and with other artists to serve Black people and people in general. And I remember having I guess I was listening to I don't think it was an interview he did with Chuck Phillips, but it was some other person, and he was talking about, oh, maybe it was Monster Cody.
Interview with Monster Cody?
A phone call.
A phone call.
Something like that. And but he, you know, he put out this nugget of like, yeah, we're gonna get all the rappers together and we're gonna do these, you know, we're gonna have a softball, like baseball league, like these sports leagues, and we're gonna create like a national network of community youth centers.
Right.
And it put this nugget in my head. Tupac was the one who put the nugget in my head of like institutions, exactly. You know, not just like quote unquote charity, not just
individualism.
Right. Just whatever reactive stuff. And I knew, he didn't have it all figured out, but it was like an instinct. It was a gesture towards something broader. And later on in life, you know, in my 20s, starting to study Black revolutionary history, you know, learning about Afeni, you know, learning about where it all really came from, and just going even, you know, deeper on that. That's what put me in the mind frame of like, I just gotta go further than he did, you know. And like the expression I always use with people is like Tupac 2.0. Like I gotta be Tupac 2.0.
Right.
You know, and it wasn't like this thing of like, you know, hip hop, like I gotta be the number one or whatever. It was this thing of like, no, he fucked up. You know what I mean? He tried.
Right.
Yeah.
But he fucked up.
Yeah.
And how? Why? You know, what really was it? And like exploring that. And it was like, it was wild. It was really wild, I guess, later on in these last 6-7 years or whatever, to learn more about, you know, going from the Panther 21 to studying the dynamics of the Black Panther Party, and then discovering that there was a Black revolutionary tradition that went all the way it could be tied to the 1800s.
Right.
You know, I mean, you could say beyond that, but specifically like you know, in a leftist sense, you know,
right.
An anti-capitalist sense. And also like going deep, even just on Tupac's music, like there's one song of his that I've heard where he has a bar. The bar was something to the effect of like, he says the phrasing was like capitalistic drug dealing, but he was referring to America.
Right.
Like he was talking about the way America operates, you know. And it was one of the records he recorded. It was one of these records that he recorded in the last months of his life, you know. And like anyone who's done a deep dive on Tupac's life and history and has heard all his interviews, like knows that approaching the you know, in the months and weeks leading up to his death, you know, he was being more vocal about engaging in political struggle more directly.
Yeah.
Granted, it was like electoral, you know, like a political party and, you know, running for mayor and things like that.
Right.
But also reading more radical literature and then like it makes you wonder like, damn, like what was Mace Windu gonna be like a black militant revolutionary? Like,
Right.
He should have been. And he should
right. And for those who don't know, again, with the stars, keeping on theme with Star Wars, Tupac was gonna be auditioning for the role of Mace Windu.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't gonna be relevant that I started reading the Phantom Menace manga the other day.
It's incredible.
Oh, it's super relevant.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't gonna come up.
That trilogy is so fucking black pill George Lucas. Like he's like fucking Cheney, fucking Bush. You sons of bitches. Pop, get in here, Pop.
Federation betrayed the Senate.
This is how democracy does. No, but hey, you don't want to be Tupac 2.0. Nobody does.
Right,
And
right.
you and me and Pac were all failed into believing that.
Yeah.
Wait, you gonna elaborate on like where you come from with that perspective? Like what in particular you mean?
Oh,
you know
that no one should want to be a Pac 2.0.
In the sense of
have y'all heard the brother's voice? Y'all have heard him speak.
yeah.
Mhm.
How old do you think he
Right,
sounds?
right. How old he sounds?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
He sounds like he's in his 40s.
And I know it's
Right.
funny, but
Right.
he knew exactly what his predicament was. Is that he was the only one
Right.
with the knowledge and with the ability,
Right.
and that reality weighed so much on him. I really believe it killed him. But he was failed by, Huey and Eldridge and
Yeah, didn't have even the infrastructure.
No, I mean-
there was no.
nothing.
Right.
No, and they knew he existed. They knew who he was. They knew
Right.
Fanny's son.
Well, he like coordinate or not coordinate, but like talked to Huey directly pretty frequently, right? Or is that
Sure? But Huey, just like Matulu, and just like none of those men were there to guide him.
right?
And Matulu did, what he could from behind bars.
Wait, who are you saying spoke to Huey? Pac. Did he?
As a child, dude.
Yeah, I don't think like it. I thought you meant like a
No,
like a
not
fleshed
in
out.
his.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it during his career, unless
Not during his
different.
career. I mean,
Because
I'm just
Huey
referring to
died in
this
the 80s.
in
Yeah,
like
it was
80
through
what?
Fanny. Yeah, when he was living, I think in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in passing things. But again,
Okay.
that's how uninvolved that generation of heroes,
Was right.
Yeah.
of strong, singular men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by the time
Right.
Pac is 13, none of those men are there to speak of to help him and guide him.
Right.
Right.
So it's worth fuck all. And he knew that. He did what he could. Pac wasn't gonna let Fanny down, and
Right.
his mother raised him, and he's his mother's son. But to the extent that one young millionaire is fully expected to, and everyone is excited to believe in him as a singular
Right.
fix-all for our problems.
Right.
Like a messiah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, and
Right.
my God, the way he is like messiah in
right.
Right.
iconography and in merch. We knew what we did to him. They knew what they did to him.
Right.
They knew that he would never ever, even if he lived long enough,
Right.
Right.
what he wanted to do and what was expected of him was never going to happen. Malcolm Martin, Huey, Eldridge, whoever
Right.
the fuck, they all did it. They all tried to posture the same way,
Right.
Right.
failed, and didn't
Right.
even work together, like actually to make it happen. So
Right.
I feel bad for him. I really do. I feel
Yeah.
terrible for that guy because he it reminds me of like Amy Winehouse. Like I know he's a powerful man, but
Yeah.
that's how at the mercy
Right.
of not only his audience but his detractors and his
You're thinking about
record
you're really pointing to like the cult of personality.
yes.
Yeah.
The cult of personality is why it's doomed to fail. Why
Right.
his
Right.
efforts were doomed to fail. If
Right.
this was a group of us and I was just a soldier in the group,
Right.
we could really implement these ideas.
Right.
It made him an easy target.
Of course.
Right.
And y'all like to see him, talk and get all emotional in interviews, and we love it and it's inspiring, but that's one man
Right.
Yeah.
screaming to the rest of the world
Right.
and knowing that y'all aren't going to do shit. Y'all are not, like, it was never going to happen.
Right.
And when he gets shot and his life is put in danger, and he kind of puts a lot of the political stuff down, the vitriol at him was even more. Oh, I thought you were a revolutionary. Now you're talking about gangster shit. Like,
Right.
now that he's dead, people say, oh, he was never a gangster. Like, oh, he
Right.
did ballet in high school. Like, what do you want from him? What did y'all want from him? Did you want a killer? Did you want
Right. What do you want him to
Malcolm? Like, what?
actually be? Yeah, and he
25. I'm older than he is, than he ever would have been, or
Right.
And I don't know shit. Like, I'm a kid right now.
Right.
I can only imagine like how the doom. I mean, we hear it in his writing, but hopeless. Like, is a sad place to be in.
Right. Right.
And I don't wish that on you.
Yeah.
I really don't
no,
wish
and
that
you
on
and you know we're on the same page
I know.
about cult of personality and like having, anything being centered on individuals, and but yeah, and on that point, I do think about how he was simultaneously aware that he wasn't being given any. I mean, he spoke at that Malcolm X grassroots
In Atlanta.
movement,
Right.
conference where he said this explicitly. He's like, I'm still supposed to be fucking getting the knowledge. I'm supposed to be behind
He should have
him.
been at Morehouse.
Right.
Like,
Right.
at 20 years old, he should have been at Morehouse looking at y'all
Right.
for
Right.
why the fuck is he speaking? And
Right.
Right.
It's
Right.
we're still in that position. We are still in that position. Like, there
Right.
is nothing for
There's
us
still
as
learning to be
men
done.
his age, around the age he was. Like, we don't have nothing from that
Right.
generation
Right.
to help us. We would all be, with his money, like, we'd all be little hims running around trying to do 60 years of work in 5 years. And
Right.
sounding 40 years old.
Yeah, and it speaks to like the time limit that is on you when you start coming forward with shit like that, and like being surveilled from the time you're like
Right.
a child.
Right.
You gotta be wrestling with that the whole time, to be like, to hear cops outside your house calling your mom a black bitch and all
yeah.
this stuff, and then you like, why would you have an expectation that you're gonna get anything done?
Or that,
Really?
like,
But he also said that he might not be the one to get anything done. He might be the one to spark
no, he
the next
certainly-
man.
He certainly was not.
Yeah.
Might not.
I say that just to reinforce.
No,
what
and
you're
that's his
saying.
words. Like, his words were, I might not do the thing, but I will inspire.
Yeah.
He's even being optimistic there. You know you're not going to do it.
Yeah. That word
one
might.
man can't do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even the
right.
mind you spark is not one man. It's the millions of minds you spark. And
Right.
hopefully that those millions glue together, and
Right.
we are no longer in a wanting for a new Pac or a new Malcolm.
Right.
But
We can
that's-
transcend that entirely.
Yeah.
Transcend that.
And I think
really
of
put his soul to rest,
Yeah.
I think of Subcomandante Marcos and Abdullah Öcalan on those points, and for those that don't know, if I can try and be as succinct as possible, for Subcomandante Marcos, he was mestizo, quote unquote mestizo, Mexican man that went into and was a professor, as far as we know, who got together with other militants, went into the jungles of southern Mexico and linked up with indigenous Mayas people, and with indigenous people sort of organically forged a militant revolutionary methodology, that they call zapatismo. But the point I'm trying to get to is we might not even be talking about this struggle or even know about it if he didn't go into the press with a mask over his face and become a heartthrob through the 90s and be associated with Rage Against the Machine, And he made a conscious decision as an individual to put himself out there in order to, in a way, play off of the contradictions, to get all eyes on him, to point to a struggle that was collective and bottom up in nature.
Right.
And I bring up Abdullah Öcalan because, this is a Kurdish revolutionary who was involved with this organization, the PKK, in Turkey. Actually, lots of parallels to me with the Black Liberation Army, in terms of trying to wage a militant, statist, and frankly authoritarian struggle from within a nation state as an oppressed people. He ended up getting captured, and by the time he had been captured, and actually still to this day, huge personality cult around him.
Flags with his face on it.
Right, like this, he's almost a mystical god prophet figure. But after being imprisoned, he started to read and write more than he ever had, and ended up taking again this pushing out from that figurehead position or cult of personality, pushing this bottom up, radically democratic, program and strategy, for Kurdish liberation and liberation of all peoples around the world. And in both cases, you have this you have a contradiction of sorts, because you have people that are pushing something that is anti-cult of personality, anti-focus on the
cult of personality to push it.
Right, exactly. And in another way, I think about how that contradiction is almost inherent anytime we see a notable thinker or artist or revolutionary theorist, whatever it might be, who is able to put some type of ideas out into the world that resonate with millions of people.
I think it's I think that's certainly true.
Right.
But it happens earlier, and it's more sinister than even that. Take it out of the political. Kurt Cobain, one of the most interviewed people of the 90s. And
I was going to bring up Kurt Cobain, but I didn't want to be the one.
No, thank you for letting me do it.
Yeah.
Because him and Pac are so similar to
Yeah,
me.
they are.
It's incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that makes it different from Marcos
Öcalan. Yeah.
to Öcalan, because we're in America.
Yeah.
Right.
So in America, you can look into the camera and say,
right.
My town was depleted of industry and jobs.
Right.
My mother was an addict. I was an addict through the public school system since I was 13. School teachers molested me. Now I'm depressed. That's what the whole scene in my city is about. And people would just nod. Okay, but why do you do this? Why do you whatever? And then when you kill yourself, and that suicide has ripple effects throughout your whole generation, people are just kind of like, what's going on with these young men? Kurt Cobain, Kurt and Pac told you exactly what was going on with them.
Yeah.
And with the men their age.
Right.
And when they eventually die, we kind of just eat their dead bodies, more or less.
Yeah, there's a whole cottage industry built on just documenting how Pac and Biggie were killed.
With no instinct of trying to alleviate the things that brought.
There's no connection.
Nothing.
There's no connection to anything broader. No collective struggle for a better world or anything.
Right.
Which,
it's
to be
just
clear,
appealing to the East versus West thing, and no.
But for both Pac and Kurt Cobain, for both of them, they were both anti-capitalist. Even though there's contradictions with both of them, but through their journals and through their interviews, they express this in
Pac
different ways.
Was a card-carrying communist. He really had the card.
Right. But when I'm speaking to the contradiction, I'm saying, people will point to the music and be like, oh, well, he's talking about getting money and getting rich. And then with Kurt Cobain, he was, in his journals, he was talking about entryism. For those who don't know, the concept of entryism is you infiltrate hegemonic system and you destroy it from the inside. He thought he could, like with Lord of the Rings, he thought he could put the ring on his finger and then take it off. And in hell, there's some people who say he was getting ready to do that, or
Well,
he was.
suicide note says he couldn't do it. Like that's really why he wrote.
Right.
But
it became a part of it.
But yeah, in both of those cases, it's like they did a lot of the dread that they felt and a lot of the depression that they felt and angst that they felt was connected to these systems, capitalism specifically, but with Kurt Cobain, he's also talking about patriarchy. He's talking about intersectionality in his journals, and he's
pharmaceutical industries,
and
therapy industries, like
and funnily enough, there's overlap. There's a page in Kurt Cobain's journal that reads like an Abdullah Öcalan entry. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's basically saying it started with men dominating. He's like all the other isms are tied, to this one. It's like, and if people who are familiar with Öcalan's work, that's like genealogy and all of that is, it's basically this thing around trying to go back and explore the history of like how these extremely authoritarian structures form. And it's like you see these common overlapping threads with patriarchy and gerontocracy, society ruled by old motherfuckers and men, know?
Oh, yeah. And Kurt and Pac definitely, like those two things, like always looking at the older men above them with so much embarrassment and scorn.
Right.
Where were you? Like, where were you for us? Like, for my generation.
Right.
Yeah.
And to be clear, from my standpoint, my kind of subtle joke about how like I didn't want to be the one to bring up Kurt Cobain, like that was really coming from a place of like, because of the cult of personality around both of them and the conspiracy, quote unquote conspiracy theory, I'm putting quotes around that because there are conspiracies, I think, in both of their cases, but because of those things, for generations there's been this like, or for decades there's been this sort of like eye roll if you're bringing their names up, because most people don't actually have a comprehensive understanding of who they were as people and what they believed and what they were trying to do and what they wanted in the world. They're basically just these caricatures.
It's the Marleyification, and when they did it to Bob Marley, we should have known they can do it to anybody. Like I literally grew up thinking Bob was just vibes, like. And then I put on a song called fucking Natural Mystic, like the first song on Exodus. And I'm like, what the fuck he's talking about? I
mean, Exodus itself, the title, movement of the people. Like,
if they can neuter him, they've neutered Pac already. Like,
multiple times.
They've neutered Kurt. And every time Kurt's popularity will come up again, they'll neuter him and neuter what he talked about again.
I mean,
that's what
literally shot through
individualism.
Pac's testicles. So like,
but that's literally what the individualism is. It's like,
I was just gonna say it was nauseating to see like this new Batman film pick my favorite. It was like the least commercial song. Like, that was like that was like our private little like deep cut in the context of the world of Nirvana, and they went and they just put
Nevermind. Like,
right, and just and blew it the fuck up.
And that becomes Kurt's
his legacy.
His touch on fucking being mopey.
Yeah,
like
mopey cop.
Batman being mopey. Like
Yeah.
We got a mopey Batman.
Yeah.
Put some Kurt on.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
We got a mopey Batman starring a dude who owns a gold mine.
Yeah.
And
Jim Gordon.
We got a vice president who smoked weed and listened to Pac. Allegedly.
And put people in jail for smoking weed and listening to Pac.
Right. So it's like, the cult of personality perpetuates all these different things that ultimately hide and obfuscate, for lack of a better word, like the revolutionary seeds of these people. Fuck even saying revolutionary, because I'm not saying
what made them important. What made them important to us.
Well, human, like, but I'm saying also, like, I'm not trying to use revolutionary on some like, ooh, like hardcore shit. Like I'm saying, like they fundamentally understood that this world and these systems that we're living in are, dog. Pac had a song called "This Ain't Living." Like he's saying like this isn't. This isn't how we're supposed to be living. Like, this isn't life.
Right. And he took that line out of Inner City Blues, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And
right.
that line is such the fucking hauntingness of, like, when you see I live in East Harlem. When you live in a neighborhood, just around, when you live around poor people, like, poor people know, oppressed people know, I'm not living. Like,
to that point, I was going to use the same word, obfuscation, because like my earliest memories of Pac are like,
that word just felt too fancy to me. But the word felt too fancy to me. So I was like, for lack of a better word,
I had it on my tongue from the start of it, because I'm thinking about like my kind of introduction to Pac is like, I don't even remember like a specific time that it happened. I just remember I was at my dad's house in Stone Mountain. And I remember it like,
yeah, y'all got an ATL connection too.
I'm
Georgia.
Where? Off Ray's Road in Memorial.
Oh shit! I grew up between Stone Mountain and Lithonia, so I was like,
oh, you deeper in there? Okay. Yeah, I'm between Stone Mountain and like Decatur, Scottsdale. Like.
Okay,
I am not from Atlanta.
No,
I mean, according to most people, neither are.
Yeah, no, we're not either.
Oh, right,
East side, baby.
Let's go. But yeah, so I was like in Stone Mountain, and I remember like my earliest memories of hearing Pac is like I feel like what most like casual listeners associate with Pac sound, which is like the later like Death Row stuff where he's like the "come with me" like that sound.
That's his most famous.
Yeah, that's like the most
iconic.
Yeah,
people don't know about Tupacalypse now.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like when he's
my niggas even like
which is when he's talking about when he's like spitting the most radical.
And that was my introduction. Keep Your Head Up is strictly from my niggas.
Yeah, and meanwhile I'm like hearing the like Illuminati shit and like
and he was angry.
Yeah, you know, like you hear the anger. The anger comes through, but it's also the like the sort of just kind of bare negativity that was like, you know, some people say is like just Suge's influence and potential
the word that's coming to my mind is interpersonal. He was getting very the earlier stuff is thinking more collectively, and then he gets more and he was saying that he was gonna swing back. That's what he was saying before he was killed, was that I'm gonna swing back, but right now I just gotta get this shit off of my chest. This is what he said himself.
It's incredible because that interpersonal era had two sides to it. It had the anger of a lot of Illuminati and All Eyes on Me.
Right.
But All Eyes on Me also, I mean, Me Against the World is where...
That's the in-between,
That's the in-between.
Yeah. That's my favorite Tupac album.
It's his best album ever.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And he predicts a lot of stylistic changes. Like, he goes about it, about lyrics the way like Drake and Kanye currently go about lyrics, like interpersonal, talking about my controversies, talking about what's going on in the big crib that I just got, but also why I'm not who I used to be, getting into that. And you look at hip hop before that, and that didn't exist at all, like really at all,
like self-reflection and like
at all, like.
Yeah, it was like you had just kind of like tales and
I woke up early on my born day. I'm 20. It's a blessing. I'm going outside and mom dapping up niggas.
I played basketball today.
It was a good day. I had a great day today, but it wasn't like too many tears. You know, so many tears.
Yeah,
so many tears.
It wasn't like you could chart a whole arc of a person. And like that was my biggest issue with Pac coming into it. Like my early introduction to him was like when you get the like. His death and Biggie's death, the whole thing just gets messy, and it becomes like you can't even, when you're just getting all of that information at the same time, it's like you can't even make a whole timeline of it. And also I didn't have like consistent access to a computer, so I couldn't just Google shit. But like you just hear like, oh, they had beef and they hated each other, but then you kind of lose out on the whole years when they were friends and they were like you know, you just kind of miss out on everything if you're just watching the documentaries and you're just
the media storm. Yeah,
exactly. And it was like,
I want to ask you something.
Yeah,
you know Thug Life?
Yeah.
memes.
Yeah. As in his like his
The
The
playing
hate
with
you give little infants fucks everybody.
Was
Fucks
it?
everyone. That's what Thug Life stands for.
Oh, the acronym. No, I did not know.
yeah.
No one knows that.
Yeah, no one
Absolutely
knows
no
that.
one knows that. And Thug
Yeah.
Life has
Yeah.
no other purpose. Like
But
Like,
it's like a
other
meme
than
to
the-
people.
it's and
The
that's
tattoo
and,
on the belly.
Yeah.
And that's how deep it will get
Yeah.
when it comes to the Marleyification, if we want to call it that.
right.
But you can literally write a code
Right.
Mm-hmm.
on how to conduct yourself, and it will be whittled down into T-shirts and
A
memes
meme.
Yeah.
20 years later.
And I was going to talk
Right.
about that earlier, you know,
Right.
like how that played a part in even shaping and forming my own personal philosophy, you know, in my early 20s, you know, thinking about
The hate.
death. Well, I was born and raised in a Southern Baptist, you know, fundamentalist Christian household. I know I sound like a broken record. It's like I just keep saying that over and over again. But it was a big deal for me, you know, and like 17, 18, you know, I had to make a long story short, I had a breaking up with organized religion as a whole. And I'm like, I'm wrestling with these deeper existential questions. And the one thing I kept circling back to was just like life and death and what happens, you know, like what happens and coming to that base thought of like, well, you know, if we had a society and a world where our basic essential needs could be guaranteed, where we could have the opportunity to explore all of our potentialities, where we were born into a community, you know, it was beyond the nuclear, quote unquote, nuclear family. You know, we had love and intimacy with everyone that was, you know, around us. You know, it's like Tupac, my only fear of death is reincarnation. You know,
Yeah.
that's what he's talking about. You know, and like that was like the huge driver for me of like, so, you know, systems change, social change, institutions, like how we relate. You get what I'm saying? Like
And it's
that was a
incredible
connection.
how Thug Life can simultaneously mean everything that you're saying right now.
And then just be a meme for a white girl to be like,
Right.
right.
How hopeless could he feel? You know, how
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
exhausted and used and defiled
Yeah.
could he have felt towards the end of his life?
Right.
What do I do? Like, what?
Right.
Right.
It's like, thank
What does
God
it
Mark
matter?
Fisher wasn't around to, you know?
I mean, and I get why it seems pointless for young men now.
Mhm.
Because if Pac did all
Yeah.
that and y'all still don't give a fuck, why?
Yeah.
Like, would
Why
you
try?
want me to throw myself into the fire too? Like, I don't want to do that shit.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do that shit at all. Y'all don't give a fuck. Y'all don't care.
Right.
And that, some y'all do, of course. But there's a lot of people who don't. Like, and there's a lot of people that paid money to see Pac, will pay money to buy his music, will slush out money to see his hologram, I'm sure.
Right.
Mhm.
But will never, ever,
Give a fuck.
or even Google what Thug Life means or what they think Thug Life means, you know?
Right.
Right.
But that does remind me of what you were saying though, coming back to the point about you specifically talking about where Tupac's head may have been at, you know, in those times and like the hopelessness of it, and then simultaneously people looking at what he went through and what he tried and seeing the results and being like, fuck that, like it's not worth it or whatever. It circles right on back to this point about, you know, individual versus collective,
Yes.
you know, struggle. It circles right on back to that, you
Yeah,
know,
totally.
because if you do have the understanding of, oh, well, no, you don't have to, and you shouldn't be, you're not supposed to be the quote unquote Messiah.
Or the one.
Right.
And I know that's how you when you heard me say Tupac 2.0, you're just like, oh, well, you're just saying another Messiah. And it's
We're
like,
just going to lose you again.
Right.
And like,
Yeah.
right,
we'll be left like we were left without Pac,
right,
aimless.
right.
You know?
Right.
But it's like when we tap into what Ella Baker was talking about, you know, of like thinking about spaces and thinking about, you know, and thinking about how we relate to one another and like what we can do together, you know, from the
yeah,
bottom up.
right.
It's not like Pac talked about himself as if he was a messiah. He was just
Right.
like, I'm just the only one talking like this. The
Yeah.
world
Right.
he expected, like
Right.
the world he envisioned. If you listen to like, I wonder if heaven got a ghetto.
Right.
He's not thinking about a heaven for him sitting down as a like he's trying to be back at the PJs at the projects. Like, I wish we were all together. Actually, like I
Right.
wish
Community.
Right.
Like for the first time, everybody let go and like. What
Right.
he says in for once I was down with the niggas, felt good in the hood being around the niggas, and I feel like
Right.
I understand that all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, they like hood niggas will ostracize a nigga who seems like an individual,
Right.
and that individual will go deeper into his individualism.
Right.
When what we
right.
need is each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And what Pac needed was
other people.
other
Yeah.
people. He did not need any more pushing into an individualism. He didn't need any more messiahs.
Oh,
like
man.
Yeah.
he was
Oh,
so
man.
alone. I
Man.
really meant it.